Well, good evening. This is Dr. Stripmatter coming to you from Baltimore, Maryland. It's about 10 o'clock on Monday evening on the 28th of September, and I've got another PowerPoint for you. It's a little bit shorter than the other one, and it picks up where we left off in our last discussions about the Oxfrauds and what they are up to. But as you will see when we get to the PowerPoint, I'm not going to dwell on the Oxfrauds for too long. We're going to review a couple of points in the debate, and we're really moving on. This is the first, this PowerPoint will be the first in a series of Shakespeare Skeptics videos. I'm going to talk about many of the famous skeptics over the last 2 centuries who have looked at the evidence for Shakespeare's authorship and shaken their heads and said, this just can't be right. Some of them more recently have advanced various theories, including most prominently the theory that De Vere wrote the plays. So I'm going to have probably as many as 6 videos in this series, each about 20 minutes long. So let's get going. So this is what we're going to cover. We're going to cover handwriting experts and Oxfraud methods, just so I can get off of my shoulders some of the nonsense that has been said both on Oxfraud and sometimes in the comments of my own YouTube channel about my dissertation and about handwriting and etc. And thirdly, all of this is going to be an introduction to Mortimer J. Adler and the Shakespeare Skeptics series. And if you don't know who Mortimer J. Adler is, you can go ahead and look him up on your own. We'll come to that at the end. But he's a very interesting man and very important for us when we're talking about, well, what kind of people are the skeptics or the Oxfordians? Our opponents frequently want to label us and put us in boxes and categories that we don't really fit in. So Mortimer Adler will give us an opportunity to take a look at that. So this is how we got here. This is a discussion that I had yesterday with someone named A.R. Lyon, a snippet of the discussion, where as you can see he signed off with "fuck you too." Well, I have to own up to some responsibility because it's probable that in my first response to Mr. Lyon was to say "fuck you." So maybe I deserve that, but the love and kisses part, I just don't know about that. That's a little too weird. So I said, oh my, Mr. Lyon is really mad now, but let me address your one substantive question. And then I quote him, you ask what is flagrantly unsound about your dissertation? Yes, the Bible in question was owned by Edward de Vere. Glad we got that out of the way. The question I have is who owned it after he died? If you don't know, then how can you claim De Vere made all the marks in it? To which I replied in 5 points. Do you know what flagrantly unsound means? Who owned it after he died? We do not know. How can you claim De Vere made all the marks in it? I don't claim that. I have never claimed that. There are pencil markings, for example, in the New Testament that I didn't include in my dissertation because their origin could not be determined in any real way. There's no handwriting in them. Personally, I think he probably made those pencil marks, but there's no basis for proving it, so I left it out of my analysis, leaving open the possibility that perhaps those pencil markings were made by an annotator. And now we're getting really down to the meat of the matter. Leaving aside your misplaced emphasis on the word all, the answer to your question is given in the dissertation, but may be summarized here as follows. Because a board-certified forensic document analyst named Emily Will told me that the annotations were in De Vere's handwriting, and because Mark Anderson and I conducted our own exhaustive independent investigation of the same question. And the people that think that I went ahead and wrote my dissertation on this without being absolutely certain whose handwriting it was must think I'm much stupider than I am. point number 5. The reason I had replied with an expletive to Mr. Lyons' earlier post was that he had demanded to tell me whether I used EBO 1 or EBO 2 in my volume of the De Vere poems. And if you don't know about that, you can find those on Amazon for sale. There's about 26 reviews up right now at 4.3 out of 5 stars. I don't actually recommend that you buy it right now because a new edition is about to come out, but it is there if you want to look at it and read some of the reviews. So I said, explain to us the difference between EBO 1 and EBO 2, and I'll answer your question. And in case you're wondering, folks, I'm going to get to it in just a minute. I'm going to explain it to you. If you don't know what you're talking about, then why should I answer you? Explain it to us. I'm waiting. Oh, gosh, you wait a long time for these people. So let me explain the difference between EBO 1 and EBO 2, and I think that you will understand why I find this question from the Oxfrauds to be very irritating. EBO 1 catalogs items dated 1473 to 1641. This I found out, by the way, after asking several reference librarians at major academic libraries who really did not know themselves the difference between EBO 1 and EBO 2. So I emailed the owners of the database, and this is what they told me. So EBO 1 catalogs items dated up to 1641. EBO 2 catalogs documents from 1641 onwards, and that does include some earlier works missed in EBO, but they're only there incidentally because they were missed in the earlier project. And the conclusion from this is pretty clear and shows how absolutely ridiculous and indeed stupidly hilarious the Oxfraud critique is. The cutoff date for most of the searches in my study was the folio publication in 1623. So EBO 2, for the most part, is irrelevant for records before 1641. Now I say for the most part because there are a few items that do turn up on an EBO 2 search that don't turn up on an EBO 1 search because they were missed in the earlier database. And all of that is going to be explained in great detail in the second edition of the De Vere Poems volume. So handwriting experts, I maintain that, well, I pay attention to them, and I think Oxfraud should pay attention to them too. So let's take a look at a handwriting expert. Who is Roy A. Hoover? And what did Hoover say in 1961 in his article published by Stratford Papers on Shakespeare on looking over Shakespeare's secretary, which means Shakespeare's secretary handwriting? There is a little bit of a confusion about the date of this document. I'm not sure if it's dated 1961 or 1960. My sources don't agree. But before we get to what he said, let's think about who he is. Because contrary to the whole argument being made by the Oxfraud participants on my YouTube channel here, there are many highly qualified people who have expressed opinions relevant to the Shakespeare authorship question. And Roy Hoover is one of them. And you can see that he was the president of the American Society of Question Document Examiners. But he is also, moreover, the author of this book, still in print in 2020. And anybody who is serious about doing forensic handwriting analysis must own and use a copy of this book, Hoover and Hedrick's Handwriting Identification, here seen in its second edition, edited by Heidi Harrelson and Larry S. Miller. I have my own copy. So here's what Hoover says about the Shakespeare signatures and comparing them to the Hand D document. And again, if you don't know what a Hand D document is, do a little bit of research. There's a lot of stuff around, and in fact, I'm going to show you a couple links at the end that will take you to good articles and good research on Hand D. So he said, the evidence is not sufficiently strong to justify a positive identification of Shakespeare as the writer of Hand D. Why did he say that? Because there simply are not enough letters, different types of letters, and combinations of letters in the Shakespeare signatures to draw any conclusion whatsoever with any other body of handwriting, and he recognized that. So how have Orthodox scholars reacted to this news of a difference from a real expert? And we're talking here, folks, let's be clear about this. This is an expert who spent a lifetime testifying in court under oath to the credibility of evidence of exactly the sort involved in the hand D question. His reputation is beyond reproach, even from the Oxfrauds. So how have they reacted? Not very successfully. As far as I was able to tell, and I'll throw out the challenge here, somebody please show me a link to a page on the Oxfraud website that mentions Huber's article or his conclusions. That would be really nice to know if they've got that far, but I kind of think you won't find it. I looked a little myself, couldn't find it, and I'm pretty doubtful. So Huber isn't the only one. Now, here are a couple. I told you I was going to give you some sources. Nina Green has a first-rate collection of documents and references on the hand D question. It's called Myths Involving Hand D in the Play of Sir Thomas More. And she just reprints a lot of really important expert testimony that has been given about this document over quite a few years. And also Diana Price's survey in the Journal of Early Modern Studies, Hand D and Shakespeare's Unorthodox Literary Trail. And I will place links to both of these documents in just below the video for you to check out if you want to. So that's the end of my discussion on handwriting. I'm going to talk a lot more about handwriting because I'm interested in it, and I'd like to make it more interesting to more people. But back to the Oxfraud methods here. It's one of the things that the defenders of Oxfraud said to me about my 60-point scale. They said, well, there are other things that you could have you could have evaluated according to other criteria, and that's very true. And so let me say that I do think that the technical aspect of this website is very sophisticated. It is stated that it's done by volunteers. I'm a little bit skeptical of that myself. So the nice thing here is you get all kinds of bells and whistles on the Oxfraud website. On the front page, they welcome you to the final destination for the SAQ, that is the Shakespeare authorship question. And then, but while you're there, you'll notice that suddenly the final destination will become the terminus, because we got a little thing actually supplying new synonyms for the word the end of. And you'll notice in Mike Ledbetter's rhetoric, very often in discussions, he'll say that, you know, you're at the end, you've lost, it's all over, we've defeated you, and words of that nature. And then, wow, it's also the end of the line for the SAQ. So this is the only website that you need, according to Oxfraud, to understand the authorship question. That's quite a bold claim. So as part of this conversation that went on, which I showed you a little snippet of it, Mike Ledbetter, under the name Sicinius, demanded that I supply the 9 Notes and Queries articles that I've published with Oxford University Press between 1997 and 2015, because I had said that the bibliography for their article about my work was really incomplete if it ignored these articles. They don't really have a bibliography in their section about the De Vere Bible. So the fact that my work wasn't in it wasn't too surprising. But I wanted to make a bit of an issue out of this. And so I supplied the 9 articles at Sicinius's request. You can see this is waiting to be approved by Oxtest. And I said, here you go. Here are all the articles listed in chronological order with the newest at the top, and the page numbers and everything that you need to find them. And I said, here you go. Surely you can look them up with your extensive research skill, because the website boasts frequently about how effective the volunteers are at doing research. They have access to all kinds of high-tech, super-duper gizmos. So this was my response. And I've checked this 2 or 3 times. I see no sign of my 9 articles that I had been asked to supply. And Sicinius says, I'm now going to delete any posts from you that do not contain a substantive response to the article on this page. Where are those 9 articles of yours? I don't believe you, and so on. You are the perfect illustration of why it is a mistake to imagine the sack is an academic argument. Nothing in your response to the Bible here. So let's just pay attention a little bit to the rhetoric here. So I think the word nothing is kind of important here. Nothing. This moral absolutism is the stock and trade of the Oxfrauds. Nothing in your response to the Bible pages here, the handy pages here, the pages on Oxford's orthography, or our analysis of your most recent book, which absolutely demands correction and apology from yourself, is in any way scholarly. So again, I just want to raise the question, Sicinius will not reveal who he is or what his scholarly background is. He wants you to think I'm being unscholarly because Jonathan Bate would say I'm being unscholarly. Petulant, yes. Insulting, yes. Condescending, yes. Patronizing, yes. Reason, no. Academically responsible, absolutely not. This is not an academic debate. It's been a playground scuffle. All its disreputable life, and it's over. So remember I said to you that fini was one of the key words on site. So I replied, you deleted the post with my 9 articles on them after asking for them. What is wrong with you, Mike Ledbetter? My. I know you want to get over this. I want to get over it too and start talking about the Shakespeare skeptics. So let's get to Mortimer Adler, the first of our Shakespeare authorship skeptics. And hopefully you've looked up Mortimer Adler by now and you know who he is, but let me introduce you to him. But oh, I'm going to give a little segue. Of course I have to give a little segue. So one of the big issues that came up in this debate was the fact that in my video, of course, I really went after them for not having an about page, because having an about page is a fundamental aspect of the ethos of a web page. The first time I taught that was probably in the University of Massachusetts School of Business in around 1999, when I was first talking, the web was new, and we were talking about, how do you assess a website? Well, having an about us statement was one of the fundamental criteria that I was taught by my professors there as I taught business communication. So there's no about page. So what I'm going to show you here is someone named Bamagosh. Again, I don't really know who that is. He seems to like some pretty cool music. Okay, Bela Fleck and the Flecktones, but what his qualifications are in the debate, we just don't know. And he says, our material, meaning the material of the Oxfraud website, stands or falls on its substance. The entire Oxfordian theory, notice again, we're talking about these absolute words. These are the kind of words I tell my students not to make, not to use these type of arguments. When you start saying the entire, all the time, nothing, everything, readers will become suspicious of your credibility. So the entire Oxfordian theory, all of it, every last little bit, was invented by a person with no specialized training in relevant disciplines, and most people involved in the authorship question on all sides are hobbyists. Why would the names or academic credentials of our side matter if the substance of the work is credible? And on the other hand, why would a weakly supported argument become more credible because of who proposed it? You complain about the quality of work by well-known academics from top-ranked schools all the time. Well, now, first of all, this is a totally unsourced claim here. I don't generally complain about the quality of work. I often complain about the poor assumptions and the lack of communication in academia. But usually when I mention, not all the time, but usually most of the time when I mention another scholar, I do it in a positive and usually even a very respectful way. There are exceptions. But back to why would the names or academic credentials of our side matter? Again, I feel like this is 12th grade stuff, Bamagosh. Ethos matters. who is speaking and what they know matter. If you're making an argument and no one will stand up to take responsibility for it, as indeed you won't yourself stand up to take responsibility for it, then it's a lousy argument, most likely. A little bit more here. 2 more paragraphs. It is hard for me to imagine that a key question of someone reviewing your thesis, well, it's a dissertation, and the material on our website would be whether the site has an About Us page. Well, it may be hard for you to imagine, but it's what every student should be asked to look for on every web page that they take information from. One explanation might be that unlike the Shakespeare Oxford Fellowship, Oxfraud is a nonprofit, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. About Us suggests a lot more organization than a Facebook news group needs. Well, I would say the quantity and flashy quality of your website suggests a lot more organization than a Facebook news group. So the site's credibility can be judged many ways beyond the scale you proposed. And I already acknowledged, like, yeah, there's really flashy stuff, like repeating the end in 3 different ways, just to punch home the notion that you don't need to read anything else on any other website than just the absolute nonsense that we're putting out. So, which, like other authorship enthusiast tests, is designed with a predetermined income. So he's trying to turn this back on me. I have a predetermined outcome. Crocodile tears. We're quite comfortable that our site is considered credible by people like Sir Jonathan Bate, Bill Kristol, and Oliver Cam, and many others. I certainly do not think that your thesis can be defended from a careful, thoughtful analysis simply by saying, who are these guys? Their articles aren't even dated. So here is Mortimer J. Adler. We have just heard Bamagosh talk about how the post-Stratfordians are amateurs and hobbyists. No, that's just wrong. It's not correct. Well, many of them may be, but many of them are not. And so let's start our Shakespeare Skeptics honor roll with Mortimer J. Adler, and hopefully Bamagosh and Sicinius and all the rest of the gang at Oxfraud will take some notice of this. This is what Mortimer J. Adler wrote in 1997. That's 23 years ago. How has this not gotten through to anybody? To the decision makers, let alone the angry groundlings like the Oxfrauds. Quote, academics err in failing to acknowledge the mystery surrounding Shakespeare's identity. They would do both liberal education and the works of Shakespeare a distinguished service by opening the question to the judgment of their students and others outside the academic realm. And Mortimer J. Adler, as you can see, is a University of Chicago philosophy professor, a very prolific author. He was the series editor of the Great Books of the Western World, the co-founder of the Center for the Study of Great Ideas, and a longtime chairman of the board of editors of the Encyclopedia Britannica. His seminar on 6 Great Ideas became a popular PBS television series hosted by Bill Moyers. His Synopticon, an index to the great ideas, is a valuable tool for many researchers. Well, I don't know about anybody else, but I'll take Mortimer Adler's opinion over the last 3 parties named on the other side any day of the week. For one thing, his approach to the question bespeaks an open mind. He simply says, let's ask the question and stop the jeering, and let's read the books and do the research. So this is the conclusion. I don't know, did I do a conclusion slide? Oh yeah. Forthcoming Spring 2020. The Shakespeare Authorship Skeptics Honor Roll is a part of this book. And in fact, we're still adding to it. And I'm going to be, the slide that you just saw was simply cropped from the book. And I'm going to continue doing that as we work our way through some of these very famous and interesting people like Mortimer Adler, who are pioneers in critical thinking and independent thinking and thinking across interdisciplinary boundaries, who have gotten interested in this topic and contributed to the solutions. So coming next in the series, the next one I'm going to do Henry David Thoreau, Delia Bacon, Clifton Fadiman, and Kristen Linklater, who is recently passed. And so people really need to know who Kristen Linklater was. He was a very, very famous Shakespeare voice coach. So in my next video, I'll be talking about her as well as the other 3 persons that I've identified here. So let me go ahead on that note, and I will pop out of the PowerPoint. So thank you so much for your attention to the video. Thank you to all of you who have made comments and who have joined my channel or in other ways have encouraged this project. I hope to continue making videos for you probably about once a week for the foreseeable future. So with that, yes, please do leave some comments. Let me remind you, however, that comments that are derogatory in a kind of quasi-racist way will not be approved. And also comments that are non-responsive to reasonable questions may also be marked for deletion. Thank you for respecting the civil discourse on which all academic scholarship must depend if it is to function properly. Good night.